and welcome back to Parenting Unpacked. You're here with Dr. Siobhan Kennedy Costantini and
Dr. Kristen Summer. Hi, Siobhan. How you doing?
hello. I'm all right. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good actually. Considering that we just had our massive blowout third birthday dino party. I'm tired, really freaking tired. But yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm all right.
Yay.
How are you though? I saw on your stories this morning that you are. No, it wasn't stories. It was our message where you're like, I'm uninvolved, but I'm usually not this uninvolved. You've been feeling rough lately.
It's true. I have. I've been a bit under the weather. Thanks. Yeah, been a bit under the weather, just trying to practice a lot of self-compassion and take things off my take the plate. Anyway, try to do less.
Throw more things out the window.
Yes, just trying to focus on dropping all the balls. Just trying to focus on what matters and focus on my relationships and cuddles. But yes, doing all right. All
have you been an overcommitter or are you sick?
Oh, I'm sick.
Okay. I was like, where did things go wrong? Did they go wrong the way they do with me? And that's that I overcommit far too often, or
I overcommit. I don't overcommit often. I flake a lot. I'm flaky as all get up. But people who know and love me know not to trust me when I say I'll do things, which is bad, but at least they know me.
It's such a vibe. I mean, that's okay. People I feel like people think that I will deliver. And I'm not sure if I do deliver all of the time. I feel like this is a false expectation that people have about me, and they just seem to believe in me more than I do or than they should.
No, I'm laughing because I relate to it, not because I think they shouldn't. I completely relate to that exact vibe, all of it. I thought it was interesting that we both separately did a Ask Me Anything on Instagram recently.
Didn't we?
I think we both got a similar question of how do you do it all? And it's like, we don't.
No, not at all.
No.
We don't do it all.
Like you, my husband does basically everything around the house. I'm very I do the dishes. That's my contribution to our household, which feels
I do the folding I'm getting of the laundry.
I'm getting the best end of the deal. I used to do the washing, and then he banned me because he didn't like how I combined colors. And I'm like, go for it.
I try to do that too, and he gets so mad. And I like to put it in the dryer, and he doesn't. So now he does the washing and the hanging out, and I do the folding because he'll just leave it in our office for 4 months if I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm the leave it person. It's technically my job to hang up the clothes that need to get hung up, and those sit there for months at a time.
Fair. Just don't hang things. Just fold everything. These are the solutions we come up with.
Exactly, that you have to find ways to make life work.
But Siobhan, this kind of tells me that we would make really awful 50s housewives. Really awful.
Very bad.
Oh, we would so not bad. We would not have husbands. We would just not get them.
I would be in a psychiatric hospital, not necessarily for mental health conditions in the 50s, but because I would be one of those, I'm not good at sitting down and shutting up. I'm not good at towing the line. I would be in trouble from everyone.
Yes.
It helps.
I don't know what I would be doing. I'd probably be, I don't know where I'd be in the 50s.
Mind you, there were a lot of amphetamines, so that could keep life interesting.
There was a lot. I mean, you had
Mother's Little Helper.
Every day. You had to be up before your husband and fully decked out in makeup.
That's the movies. I don't think a lot of real people did that. Nah. Also, the thing that helps me feel better is I'm Irish Catholic, for generations back. Me and my siblings were the first to really marry outside of that. And the good thing is that Irish Catholic women don't put up with shit. So
we like that.
For the most part, I have lots of strong, opinionated women in my family.
Nice.
My uncle had a whole bunch of health issues recently, and his doctor was asking him whether he had any family to support. And he goes, "Oh yes, I've got 6 sisters who are all alpha males." That is a great way to describe my aunts. My aunts and my mother, alpha males, absolutely.
Yes, he will be fine. The beta will be fine. He will be cared for by the alphas.
Pretty much.
This conversation got unhinged really quickly. Well, Siobhan,
that's the vibe.
we're going to talk about today's episode because we had originally jumped on and we were about to start talking about like one topic. And then we had a guest arrive and we were both very confused for a moment because we're like, who is this person and why are they joining on our podcast?
Do you know what? My calendar popped up and said that Jess, you've got a podcast interview with Jess, but because you hadn't said anything, I was like, oh, I must be mixing my dates up. So I'm glad that Jess joined the chat. She joined the chat and then we're like, oh, we got our dates mixed up.
So anyways, Jess Guy, who is in the very final stages of her PhD. I mean, motherhood will do that to a PhD if you haven't submitted it by the time you get pregnant. She did a child development PhD. We discovered that we all have similar like background knowledge, which is all about kids' use of technology. I don't know how that happened, but like, I love it. We're going to do an episode on that in the future, but that's not what we talked about today. We talked about sleep, baby sleep, and specifically not sleep training, but the other method. So the other side of the whole baby sleep spectrum, which is about looking at your child's biology and their neuroscience and working on the family unit as a whole to improve sleep without changing the infant, which was really cool. And I really enjoyed talking about it because I've always been like on the outskirts of this like kind of topic. I can just kind of commentate on the behaviorism side and the biologically normal infant sleep, but I have never really been into depth in these kinds of areas. So it's really nice to have that insight. You guys will get that soon too. So it was really fun.
It was so fun. And I think we talk about this in the episode itself, but when it comes to sleep training, there's a script. It's very easy. You do X, Y, and Z, and everyone gets given the same information, and it's just packaged slightly differently depending on who's presenting it, but it's basically the same recipe. But I guess the tricky thing of when people say, well, what's the alternative, is that the alternative is so nuanced and holistic and takes into consideration so many different things that there is no script. It's so tailored by its very nature. And when it comes to individual sleep needs, that makes sense. Like anything that's worth doing should be tailored to you and your individual needs. So Jess goes through a lot of those things and kind of helps to explain how she does what she does and the why behind it as well, which I really enjoyed. So you can find Jess at Infant Sleep Scientist on Instagram, but feel free to listen along and enjoy the episode with our Jess Guy, the sleep scientist lady. Infant Sleep Scientist is her actual tag.
I feel like you're leading into the episode here, but I have more things to say. So
go for it. Go for it.
Back. The first one is I just realized that both of the guests we've had on this season so far are Jess. So we had Jess Painter, who was speaking about autism, and now we've got Jess Guy who's talking about sleep. Maybe we should just continue the trend and keep finding Jesses with PhDs to come on the podcast. Let us know if you think that's of any interest and help us find Jesses who are scientists.
What's your criteria for podcast guests? You have to be named Jess and you need a PhD or you need to be close to having one.
Exactly. But anyways, like on the topic of sleep, and the delineation between sleep training and the people that don't do sleep training, like the gentle, I don't know what to call them, the others. So we've got the sleep trainers and then we've got the others, whatever. So you were talking about our AMA or Ask Me Anything that we were doing recently. One of the questions I got was, what's your opinion on sleep trainers on social media, like name here, who treat babies like robots? And my response was like, stock standard. Anyone that treats humans, regardless of age, as robots doesn't pass the vibe check. Like ignore, move on, and go and find someone who treats humans as they are, variable humans with complex needs and emotions and desires. And then 15 hours later, someone slid into my DMs saying, multiple mums have DM'd me saying you've said something awful on your page about me. Please take it down immediately. And I was like, what did I do? And this was the person who was tagged in the followers question. And this follower had done this person's course. And so she said, we've had several mums DM us about the story you posted about me and my business. Please delete it. We do not encourage parents to treat their babies like robots at all. What you've put out there is untrue. You've got nothing to back up what you're saying, and I will take further action if the story isn't taken down immediately. And my brain went straight to cease and desist. because I had another cease and desist recently from another sleep trainer when I was talking about abstract things and opinions, and that's not defamation. So I wasn't worried. I was just like, wow, like I wasn't even talking about you. I was just talking about general terms about all humans and that we shouldn't treat them as robots. And you took that as I am offending your business. And like, that's a really interesting thing to me. And it made me realize that Instagram businesses are the odd ones out when it comes to the fact that they don't have public reviews. They get to present whatever facade they like. And every time that someone says something negative about it, they threaten with defamation and a cease and desist. And that is so incredibly interesting to me. It doesn't even have to be the sleep training industry, but the fact that Instagram doesn't have a way for people to review Instagram businesses so that there is a well-rounded discussion about that business and the impacts that they use is really interesting, especially when these businesses capitalize on positive reviews and influencer marketing to only talk about the good things. It really biases and unbalances the information. And that's what ends up with people like you and me, Siobhan, buying a program that was dubiously concealed as sleep training by calling it gentle. But if there had been reviews like Google reviews or Facebook reviews, like every other platform that has a business that runs solely through there has a review section. If there had been reviews, we would have known, oh, this is just modified Ferber, or it's literally just Ferber repackaged, because someone would have said it. So, you know, if we'd had those reviews, we would have had a more well-rounded view of what's happening. And this might actually nip this sleep training issue in the bud really quickly, because you'd have like almost like Amazon reviews, like preferred sellers or people with 4-star reviews plus, like all this kind of stuff. It would solve so many problems because there'd be a more open discourse about whether these practices are working or not. And it would allow people to see through the crap. So yeah, I don't know. That's just my random thought when I was being threatened by yet another sleep trainer for making abstract arguments about why we shouldn't treat babies as robots. I have learned that I should probably black their names out. Although when they're a public platform engaging in positive promotion and they're okay with their stuff being cited positively, should we really censor their names if someone gives a negative review? I don't know. What do you think?
No, I absolutely think no. So
I love that.
I think it's one thing to like literally just pile on someone and be like, this person is terrible and their business is terrible. I think that's not okay. That's not ethical or a good way to be spending our time. However, to call something out and say it as you see it based on like, and not even in the specifics, to just be like, in my opinion, this information is incorrect and for the following reasons, I think that's completely fine. I have had, I think I've talked to you about before, I've had cease and desists. And the beauty of a cease and desist is that it counts for nothing unless there's followed up legal action. So this is me being a rebel without a cause and be like, yeah, sue me. What are you going to do? I have done nothing wrong. That's probably coming from a place of ignorance, because presumably if I get sued, I have to pay for those legal costs. So it's probably, so it's probably not a great thing. But most people don't actually go ahead and sue. It doesn't help that I'm in it. Typically, I get this, I've only had one official cease and desist, but typically these people are in a different country. So the effort involved in taking an international person to court, really hard. Anyway, this is me just like effing with the system. But yeah, like, no, I had someone who came at me for a trademark claim. And I'm like, you can search trademarks. And I did. And I said, well, your trademark claim is not valid in Australia and therefore incorrect. But out of an act of good faith, I will change it. And I did, because I'm not here to be an asshole or anything. But like, people get real, particularly Americans, because it's a highly litigious society, get real happy to throw around legal nonsense. It's like, those words don't mean what you think they do. Anyway. And I mean, generally I'm anti.
That's what I did. Yeah. So that's what I did. I took down the post that she asked me to, and I was like, sure, look, I'll take it down. And I'll black your name out and put it back up. Like, but you know what you did? You took a post that was going to disappear in about 9 hours, And you, one, gave it more airtime. You then, like, the 2,500 people plus that saw that story already will now see it again with a blacked out name and know that something's gone down. And then I exercised my right to use my platform to be fully transparent. And I was like, hey, I just took down a post and blacked out the handle. Let's talk about why I did it. Let's talk about what happened. And like, so anyone that saw that post will know that that person came to me and said that they found it defamatory and that they would pursue further action. So I was transparent with my audience, because if I'm going to take information down and change it, they deserve to know why, because otherwise it's deception. And I'm not going to be scared by someone who is pissed off that their name was mentioned alongside the word babies as robots. Like, that's not my issue. And they use the public platform to promote themselves, so they should expect some negative feedback. And what ended up happening, so it really blew back on this person. Well, not that I know of, but I've had many people who follow me send me DMs being like, yes, like she called it gentle and it ended up being Ferber. She's concealing the fact that she's just teaching the same old the sleep methods. She's misrepresenting it in her marketing. And like, so many people started like jumping into my DMs that otherwise wouldn't have said anything. And that information otherwise wouldn't have spread as far. It always baffles me when people try to like arc up about a story that's about to go off anyways. It's like they want to be like exert their authority and scare you into like not doing it anymore. And what that does is it's
called the Barbara Streisand effect. There's heaps of research on it. So apparently in like the mid 2000s, Barbara Streisand's it was either a photo of her house or her address was leaked. And she got understandably upset, and she said, take it off the internet. And there was like a full thing. And then the internet went, ha, ha, ha. You can't take things off the internet.
Oh, no.
And then they just blasted it everywhere. I don't know whether it was 4chan or Reddit or whatever. And a probably more famous and similar thing was that Beyonce, what's it called? Super Bowl photo. There was a photo of her that was not very flattering, and apparently her people asked for it to be removed. And then same thing, the internet went, ha, 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 we'll post it everywhere. So basically exactly what you say, the bigger fuss you make about it, it turns into, it creates attention, and it turns it into a bigger thing than it otherwise would have been.
Interesting. Me here not realizing that we are engaging in the Barbara Streisand effect, but boy, was it an interesting conversation to have. And it started what is actually a really interesting conversation and a really interesting realization or conversation with my followers, which was, you know, hey, like, I am like, people are actively censoring negative reviews about their company or their business on social media. You know what this means? It means that we have to take everything with a heavy grain of salt. You wouldn't buy that iPhone case from Amazon without looking at the 1-star reviews to make sure that it's not like super fucking useless. But you can't do that on social media. So all of a sudden you have to believe what you see, or you have to take it with a grain of salt and be like a critical user of social media. And that's really hard to do, especially when you're running on almost no sleep. So yeah, it was a really interesting learn. I put a poll up to ask people like what they thought about whether Instagram should like instantiate a reviews thing for business pages, because there are business pages on Instagram, and we've had 95% say 1000% yes, and only 5% say nah, leave that to Google and Facebook. So everyone wants these reviews because any business needs to be like evaluated in public opinion unbiasedly. So yeah, anyways, that's just my 2 cents on that.
I agree with you. I voted in that poll as yes. Yeah. But I mean, mind you, I was going to say I'd give 5 stars to Jess, but I haven't actually used her services. But based on our conversation today, she's wonderful.
I would give our conversation 5 stars. And without further ado, let's dive on in to our conversation with Jess.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I run an Instagram page, Addicted Sleep Scientist. Some of your listeners might have come across me before, or maybe not, but that's the main platform that I sort of exist on and communicate with parents and put out information about baby sleep. So my background is in developmental psychology and child development research. I have been in the final stages of finishing and handing in my PhD for far too long now, but it's getting there. And then I've also worked as a sleep scientist in the past with adults, and all of that might kind of sound like this whole time I've had this master plan to become, an infant and family sleep specialist, but that's not how it occurred at all. It was more when I became a mum myself and started getting all of the information that all of us get when we have babies and with sleep and everything. A lot of it wasn't really making sense to me, aligning with me. Doesn't mean I didn't doubt myself or start even dipping my toes into certain, methods and ideas. And out of that whole process, I did feel like I got a bit off track for a while, but then once I kind of came back on track, I really sort of came back on track. I feel like with a bit of a vengeance and wanting to learn as much as I could about it, and also help other parents navigate the information as well, because it just did really seem like a bit of a mess out there. And so that brought me to where I am now. I did a infant and family sleep specialist certification through Babomia, which is facilitated by neuroscientist Dr. Greer Kirschenbaum. So I saw her talk in a summit. I think it was sort of when I was in my midst of trying to gather all of this information about normal infant sleep, and just really loved what she had to say and all of her insights. And so when I saw that she ran that course, I did that. And then I started my Instagram page, and the rest is sort of history. Here we are today. So I mainly help families with sleep and do a lot of sort of sleep education, science communication on Instagram.
That's amazing. And so seems to totally tie in with kind of the way that Kristen and I entered things as well. I know that Kristen, definitely, you can speak to yours, but I remember I first started making notes because I have two younger sisters. And I remember my baby must have been 6 or 7 weeks old. I'm right, I got to write some of this shit down. They need to know how bonkers this stuff is. Not only how bonkers just babies are, but how bonkers the information that you get, the nonsense that's out there and why it's wrong. So I literally had a Word document that was the baby manual, and it was designed specifically just for my sisters. And then slowly grew and grew and grew, and has become what I do now. But it sounds like we have a very similar vision and mission.
We've all had the same trajectory by the sounds of it. We've all been scientists in general child development, and then come into motherhood, been slapped around really hard by the system, by the misinformation, by social media, and we've come out guns blazing, ready to put those falsehoods to the test. And in the midst of doing that, getting cease and desists because what we say doesn't accord with what very powerful socially normative industries like to say. So cool, that's really fun. But just really random aside, and I know this shouldn't be a random aside, but let's face it, it is. What was your PhD on? What was your topic?
So I mainly looked at preschool age children and how they use technology in learning from technology, and a lot with parent-child dyads, looking at how it affected social interactions. So play-based sort of situations, and comparing, or not comparing, but alongside that also learning in more formal educational context. So kind of a broad, how is and does digital technology sort of affect learning and development across sort of the preschool years.
We are such similar people, Jess, because that's what my topic was. Sort of.
Yeah. And in my postdoc, I ran studies that looked at the same kind of ideas. So we need to grab a drink with you one time and pick your brains.
Or maybe just put it on the podcast. Maybe we'll do a second episode on digital learning and technology. I mean, we can virtually I'll drink soda water. It's fine. Oh, Lordy. Anyways, I think, Siobhan, it's your turn to ask a question, because Siobhan and I are taking turns today. We're trying not to speak over the top of each other. I'm not sure if it'll work.
Oh, we're very bad at it. Even, do you know what? So we were on the phone. So Kristen always gives me a call before each episode, so we can just make sure that we know what we're doing. And the answer is we don't ever. But I was noticing that even on the phone, we're just constantly interrupting each other, and we answer the question that was asked 2 questions ago because we're already anyway. No doubt all of our listeners appreciate and understand that we're useless in some ways and fine in others. Anyway, all of this is nonsense. True. Questions. So how do you find that, I'm curious whether any families come to you like preemptively, or do most of them come to you from a space of like distress and at their wits' end? Because I imagine that it would tend to be more of the latter.
It's absolutely more of the latter. And it's something, when I first started kind of like going into this area and thinking I want to do this, you know, kind of as a job, my idea of it was preemptive education, sort of, you know, give people that information up front and so they can make more informed decisions all along the way. But that's not really how it plays out. Or, you know, potentially it's a little bit about around the fact that of my strategy of, you know, kind of like you girls, I just don't really have one. And where I am on Instagram, I just tend to attract the people that have already gone through all of that, you know, normal sort of introduction into motherhood and getting all of the information from all of the normal kind of sources. And then, you know, potential, like, I think a really common age that people find me is 4 to 6 months, because things start to often go a bit sideways if they weren't already sideways up until that point. Or maybe it was, but they're expecting it to get better by now, and it doesn't, or it gets worse. And so, and not only that, they've been exposed to a lot of sleep training methods and advice, and it's, you know, it's not working for them, or it's not aligning with their values. And so then they sort of start looking for something different, or they stumble across, you know, my page or a page like mine. So yeah, definitely say that it is the latter. And I am usually, you know, helping parents to unlearn a lot of the things that they've learned, try to get back in touch with what it is their baby is telling them and their instincts are telling them, that they've, you know, really been sort of discouraged from listening to. And, you know, that a lot of that attunement has sort of, you know, there's been attempts to break a lot of that attunement. And that's when they're coming around, you know, although people still do often come to me with, even if they don't want to use non-responsive methods, and they're all for that, they want responsiveness, but they also want, you know, good sleep, which is completely fair enough. But often the expectations can still be very unrealistic. Like they may still be looking for the solution, you know, the outcome of sleep without sleep training. And so that's always a big part of navigating it as well, is really shifting the expectations.
Yeah, that's huge. And I feel like something we didn't quite set up beforehand was that you aren't a sleep trainer. And I think a lot of people get really confused about what a sleep trainer is, or what a gentle sleep specialist is sometimes, and what you do. So do you want to clarify the different terminologies people use, how to spot the difference between someone like you who uses like science and biology and an understanding of infant neuroscience, versus the more common garden variety sleep trainer and the stuff that they kind of sell? They seem to be the majority on social media, are the sleep trainers, or whatever they call themselves now. So do you want to delineate that for us?
Yeah, so in terms of, I'll start with kind of the differences in our approach, and that would largely be around the, you know, the actual methods being used to try to improve sleep. And in sleep training, that, to boil it down, is it's around the parent responsiveness, changing how the parent responds in order to sort of, you know, encourage a change in the baby's behavior around sleep. Now, that is sold as teaching sleep or changing sleep, improving the baby's sleep, but it's not exactly what is happening. It's not at all what is happening. It's changing, you know, the baby's behavior as opposed to the actual sleeping, you know, how they sleep or how much they sleep. You know, those aren't really things that you can change, but you can, with a lot of babies, not all babies, affect the way that they do or don't signal to you for support. So, you know, that's the main method of sleep training. When sorry, I've gotten a bit lost now. All right, so because I was thinking about this in 2 parts in my head. So you've got the methods themselves are more behavioral focused, changing the parents' responses to affect a change in the baby. When you're working with someone like me, I'm not focusing at all on changing responsiveness to get a particular behavioral change or outcome. I'm looking at things from a lot of different angles. I mean, a lot of the time the baby is sleeping really, really normally. And so it's a case of looking at all of the other things that are going on, like the family circumstances and the developmental stage of the baby and what we can reasonably expect from them, the setup that they're currently kind of using to facilitate or that maybe doesn't facilitate responding, the kind of all of those decisions that people are making around how they actually approach sleep in day to day. So if somebody is, for example, trying to constantly put their baby in a crib and that's not working, and the baby is always waking up when they put them down, then it's about thinking about how do we actually change maybe how you approach sleep so you and your baby get better sleep. And that might mean, depending on the age, especially for an older baby, like, have you thought about getting a floor bed so you can lie next to your baby and fall asleep together? And then it's not so hard for you to be responsive. So you're really trying to set up this environment that makes it easiest for the parent to keep parenting the way they want to, and where we're not expecting the baby to kind of change their needs or stop having needs in order for us to get better sleep. Like, everybody has to kind of, be willing to come to the party, so to speak. In terms of, because you also asked, I think, Kristen, what to look out for. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing would be the claims, because sleep trainers will make big claims. Like, we will get your baby sleeping through the night in the next couple of weeks, making blanket statements like babies all should be having very long naps, that's the only way to get restorative sleep. And if they don't have long naps and uninterrupted night sleep, then they're not going to develop properly. They're always, they're very overtired babies, or, that every baby can be taught to self-settle, that this is a skill that parents need to teach their babies. People who work like I do that are truly gentle will not say things like, because it quite simply isn't true, that babies have different sleep needs. They can't all be expected to learn how to self-settle, particularly not on the very short timelines that a lot of sleep trainers will be suggesting is possible. And, making guarantees like that is just very at odds with how different every single baby is, different temperaments, different sleep needs, different, just all the individuality. And so that for me is always a big red flag when there are these really big claims happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a good point. And I think it's so easy for us to forget that babies are people, and people are all different to one another. Like, Kristen is a morning person. I would sooner die. That's not true. I now have to be a morning person, but that's not my preferred method. My little one wakes up early. Boo hiss. But it suits Kristen's lifestyle, but that doesn't mean that she or I,
your child is an early riser, therefore a sleep trainer would tell you that that's something that you need to fix, right? Jess, what would you do? Let's ask Jess. That's a good one.
Came to be a really early riser and they didn't want to wake up early. Well, I mean, I would say potentially, depending on their age, you might be able to shift it a little, but maybe not. You could try a few things, but it depends if it's their chronotype or just a pattern that they're in.
Yeah. We've tried everything. Actually, it's not true. We've tried some things.
But it's about is it working with your lifestyle? No. Well, maybe we could try to change it, but also it may not work at the end of the day.
Totally. No. Yeah. And I mean, we've quote unquote solved it by I go to bed earlier. Mm-hmm. Do I hate that? Yes. But such is life. It's a season. Exactly. It's not forever. In 10 to 15 years, he'll be sleeping until like 10 a.m. and I'm in there with the air horn and I'm getting my adjust desserts. It's going to be fine. It's going to be great. It's okay. I've not envisioned this at all. Kidding. I'm not going to do that. I love my child. That would be cruel. Anyway, all of that aside. But yes, that different people do different things. And because Kristen wakes up early and likes it and I wake up early and hate it, neither of us are getting less or more restorative sleep. People are different. Heaven forbid. But my question for you is, I think like I did a reel a couple of weeks ago about how regressions, because like I know that in the gentle sleep stage, they're often described as progressions because it's more the nature of children's, that when their brains are on fire with learning, sleep goes out the window. And the example I use, that as an adult, when you've started a new job, or if you're like, say, for example, your wedding is tomorrow, you might not sleep well that night because you're excited and there's a lot going on in your brain. And kids are learning constantly. There's so much learning and happening going on, which can be disruptive for sleep. But the thing that I pointed out in that reel is that there is a bit of a difference for the 4-month quote unquote sleep regression. And I was wondering if you could explain to us a bit about how that shift is different and how it's important for kind of infant neuroscience and sleep behavior.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right that it does kind of differ from other progressions or periods of development that affect sleep. And exactly like you said, it may not even be a period of development. It could be some environmental thing that's happening. It could be change, could be illness, just all the things that happen to us all the time are affecting the way that we sleep. And babies have a much lower capacity for sort of a threshold for when they then go, okay, well, now I need more support, and you're the source of support, right? So that straight away they're going to revert back to being more, quote unquote, needy in a sense, or more clingy. The 4-month progression is different because, like you said, it's an actual shift that occurs in the maturation of their sleep cycles. So when babies are born, they don't have a set circadian rhythm being that 24-hour body clock that sort of, it just explains why we wake up and feel tired and do different things at roughly the same time each day. That doesn't, that's not set when they come out. It takes several months for it to emerge and develop. When they're newborns, they have 2 stages of sleep, which are active sleep and quiet sleep, which are kind of like a deep stage of sleep, and then like REM, rapid eye movement sleep, which is a lighter stage of sleep. At around between 3 and 5 months, everything matures, they gain some sleep cycles, and then they do start sleeping more like adults in the sense that they have the same sleep architecture. So they have 3 stages of sleep, which are light to deep, and then they have REM. But a few pretty big differences still remain. Their sleep cycles are still quite a bit shorter, like under an hour compared to about 90 minutes. And they also still spend a lot more time in light stages of sleep. So they have a lot more REM, and then, they also have a light non-REM stage of sleep now. And so those things contribute to the shift that occurs, the more frequent waking that tends to happen because then they have those short sleep cycles. And also they have still got a lot of really light sleep. And again, it's quite easy to be woken up in light stages of sleep. And so all of those reasons contribute to why they will be waking more frequently and may even continue to wake more frequently for months and months to come compared to potentially how they slept as newborns. That's not always true because, some just breeze through it and you don't really notice and they sleep the same. Some newborns were sleeping absolutely terribly, or, waking a lot very frequently. And so then it doesn't get worse. But a fairly typical experience is that a lot of babies will maybe start doing like 5 or 6 or 7 hours around, like there's a sweet spot around kind of 6, 8 weeks, 9, 10 weeks, around that spot before they come kind of towards the end of the 4th trimester. And then everything kind of gets shaken up by that 4-month regression. But yeah, you're shaking your head, Siobhan, so I don't think that was your experience.
They just all
terribly.
I had, shit sleep from woe to go. I think he didn't sleep more than 3 hours.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, it was just terrible from the beginning. He the first time he slept more than 4 hours was at 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, it was just terrible. But I've talked about that extensively.
I had the normal experience though. I had the
yay, go for you.
Sienna got to like 9 hours straight. Like she came out of the womb sleeping through the night. Like the first few nights, like the hospital was like, you have to start waking her. She needs to eat. And I was like, I'm so tired. And like my postnatal depression and anxiety was heavy already. And like, anyway, she slept. so well, and she got to 9 hours a night, and then she hit 3.5 months, and then she woke 12 times a night for a year. So that's how. Yeah. And like, I think the question here, like, there's a couple of questions here about this shift, because it's renowned in every kind of mothering circle that there is this 4-month sleep regression. And there's this one, like, there's a couple of different things, right? One is that you could kind of like be creating it in your mind because you expect it to happen. So you see it when maybe it doesn't happen. It might emerge. But my biggest curiosity, and maybe you've done the research, is the babies who breeze through it versus the babies that don't, is that the variation in temperament? Is that the self-soothers versus the signalers? Is that where this kind of juxtaposition between babies comes in, or is it not that predictable?
So I would be hypothesizing, because I just don't really think that there's research to support that, but I believe that that is pretty much hitting the nail on the head, that if a baby breezes through it and then kind of continues on to then self-soothe and, you know, not wait completely between most of their sleep cycles and look for support, then it's just because they have an innate temperament that is more kind of easygoing. They don't need as much input to sleep. Because from a scientific perspective, they're still rousing between their sleep cycles, because everybody does. So there's a difference in, behavior that is occurring that hasn't been brought about by the parents' change in their responsiveness. And so the kind of lead on from that would be that it's innately from the baby, and, you know, it is their temperament.
That's so... And I think this kind of idea around temperament and how it affects behavior in general and sleep more specifically cannot be shouted from the rooftops enough, particularly because when it comes to sleep training as the dominant kind of culture certainly in Australia and America and other Western countries, is that something like 30 to 40% of babies and people have more easygoing temperaments. Mm-hmm. So if every single person attempts to sleep train, like about 40% of babies are going to really, quote unquote, benefit. As we know, it's not benefit, but they're going to
appear to have,
appear to have benefited from the sleep training, because for them it was not a big deal. Or perhaps, I mean, I'm hypothesizing here, but like perhaps they wake up and go, "Hey, help me," and then the parents go, "Nah," and then they go, "Oh, okay, no worries, I'll figure it out." Whereas, I mean, that's anyway.
I looked at that.
That's my beautiful. Yeah, thanks. Love it. Anyway, but
I agree with that.
Yeah, but and for those parents, they're like, "Yay, sleep training works." And then the sleep trainers are like, "Look at all my wonderful stats." But then for the babies, like and then we've got the slow to warms who are maybe try for like 2 or 3 weeks and eventually push through to that behavior change, but it's a harder slog. And then for the really highly sensitive babies, nothing works and everyone screams, parents and baby included. And then hopefully for their insanity, they give up. And then they get cast as like sleep training dropouts. And then they're the ones who just didn't do it properly. And so it's like temperament indirectly actually helps to reinforce the myths around sleep training.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. I think that that's what largely perpetuates the sort of culture around it, because there are a certain amount of babies who do sleep train relatively easily. So there might be a little bit of crying, but it's that textbook kind of example. Like maybe they'll cry for this long on the first night and then this long on the second night, and it's staying in those parameters, and the parent, you know, has that expectation. And so it's sort of following that, you know, that guideline or whatever it is that is, you know, set their expectations for what that process is going to look like. But when it doesn't go like that, then, you know, rather than saying, okay, well, maybe this baby is not the right baby to be doing this with, or maybe there's a reason why this isn't working, you know, rather than sort of accepting it as that, there is, I think, this idea that it is the parent wasn't consistent enough, the parent didn't try hard enough. But, you know, I should also say there's nothing really wrong with that either. Like if a parent tries something and then it feels wrong to them, then it's not a bad thing to stop doing it. I don't see that as a negative, and it's painted as a negative instead of what I think it exists for a reason. If your whole being is telling you this doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right for me, it doesn't feel right for my baby, then it doesn't really matter if it would have worked in another 4 or 5 days or 2 weeks or one night. It doesn't, that doesn't really matter, I don't think. And I don't think it's very helpful to push that line that it puts so much pressure and blame on parents to be the one, and it also gives this illusion that we have that much control. And I don't think that we do have that much control. And I think feeding into that idea is what creates more problems, more anxiety, more stress, all of that, so.
Absolutely. I could not agree more.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I guess, so thing that I was like, here's something I've been mulling over for a long time, because I've never done a gentle sleep course, although I've followed many gentle sleep people, which is what I would categorize your group as, like the actual gentle sleep, Baber Maya, Isla Grace, all that kind of stuff, or James McKenna or Pamela Douglas, like that kind of stream of thinking. But I've never known what the methods are. And it's kind of just clicked while talking to you and listening, that while sleep training and sleep consultants seem to have the same handbook, and Siobhan and I have both bought one of those handbooks before in our early motherhood journeys that have wake windows, lengths of naps, what it looked like, overtiredness, exhaustion, like restorative sleep, FERBA, cry it out, camping out, all these kinds of things.
Shush method.
The patch shush, I mean, come on, the patch shush method, it should work. And don't make eye contact, and don't pick up and cuddle and all these kinds of things. It's just like, it's basically like a script, right? Like, these are all the steps you follow and you will have a perfect baby. And I always describe it as a parent intervention, because sleep training is a parent intervention. It doesn't solve anything for the infant. It solves things for the parents, even though sleep trainers sell it as being something for your child, even though it's not. It's for you as an adult to navigate life better. And for some people, that's very necessary. And when you were describing the things you do, it sounds an awful lot like yours is a parent intervention as well. And that's a good thing, because you're not trying to intervene on an infant who doesn't need intervention. What you're doing is you're helping the parent navigate how to accept the child they have, and how to work with that child's temperament and sleep needs, to create an environment that works for everyone. An infant can't really change that actively because they're fresh in the world. We can't do that, but we're adults and we can. And so that sleep deprivation reduces when we reduce the anxiety and the lack of information and the like stress and confusion, and we start changing the way that we sleep. And I know for me, that changed when I got a floor bed and I started co-sleeping and side-lying feeding and all this kind of stuff, because I had an extremely wakeful child. It took us a long time to figure out that she had health problems. But I imagine that's probably something you do as well in your practice, is you help parents navigate the triaging of health problems, because pediatricians don't do that. Do you want to talk a little bit to that kind of stream? Because we know that pediatricians have the same stock response. If a baby doesn't sleep well, sleep train them. It's almost a necessity at every pediatrician checkup. So yeah, do you want to speak to that kind of path?
Oh, I do. That's kind of a big one, because it's something that I always keep in mind, not only, well, because as well, I need to stick within my scope of practice. And if I'm seeing things that are alarming to me, then I will refer on. The issue is that often I'm telling them to go to the person that is going to do exactly what you just said and convince them that it's a behavioral issue. But I'm still in a position where I still feel like I need to be referring them to that person, because they're the licensed healthcare professional that they need to go to. They're the gatekeeper of the other specialists they might need. And yet they're going there and then often being told that what is occurring is a behavioral issue, even when there's been red flags kind of come up, like clear sort of indications of bodily discomfort being described, or even that I'm seeing, because people will send me videos and I go, this doesn't seem right. This baby seems uncomfortable. It seems like there's something more going on, or in the very least, we need to investigate it and rule it out, because there's just not really a lot that, well, for starters, I don't recommend methods that are not truly gentle. So even with working with me, I'm not normally worried that what we're doing could be, make, detrimental to or exacerbating anything that's going on. But sorry, I just lost my train of thought again. What's going on? But oh my God.
Referring onwards, and that the pediatricians, that's where we were talking, referring onwards, but that they might treat it as behavioral when there are clear red flags that it's a physiological issue.
Flag or physiological issue. Not that I think the quote unquote sort of methods that I use would exacerbate medical issues anyway. But if people are experiencing sort of true problems, you do want to get to the bottom of that. And it's part of the puzzle, because you can also be recommending floor beds. You can be saying, take everything off your plate that you possibly can. Here's the sort of biologically normal infant sleep education. But if baby is having a true sleep problem, if they're uncomfortable, or if they have a breathing issue, that is obstructive sleep apnea or something like that, then it does need to be addressed. But it does seem like it's really difficult to get taken seriously when you go to doctors and say, I think my baby has, or, I don't know what it is, but I really think there's something underlying this. Oh, what are the symptoms? Oh, they wake up every hour. Oh, it sounds like a behavioral issue to me. Sleep train them. And I've worked with parents where one of my first recommendations was, I really think maybe go to the doctor, say what these symptoms are, and ask them for a referral to a specialist. And they'll come back, and I say, and then sort of we can go on from there and talk about how we're going to manage all of this and find ways for you to manage and cope day to day with your very wakeful baby. And they'll come back and say, oh, the doctor said that they don't really think that it's a problem, that as long as they don't snore X amount or all night, or whatever it might be, some sort of seemingly arbitrary measure to me, particularly if it's not a specialist who investigated it, and they'll say, the doctor said I'm okay to start sleep training, which is not what I do anyway, but often the doctor might not really know. If a person has gone to them and said, oh, I'm working with a sleep consultant and they've told me to come and rule out, then the doctor's probably assuming that they're seeking out behavioral sleep training. And so, that's actually happened more than once, that someone has come. I've been given the all clear to sleep train. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's just a bit of a messy situation, I think. And I always say to parents, trust your gut. Do you feel like something is wrong here? Do you feel like something is really going on that is causing your baby to be more wakeful than what is normal? Some babies are just quite wakeful, and our expectations of babies are very high in terms of sleep. They're more based on how we as adults like to sleep. We've taken ideal adult sleep, the gold standard adult sleep, we've applied it to infants, and then because there's such a huge mismatch, we've decided that means that there's a problem with infant sleep, when all along it's sort of this issue of where that model actually came from and how it came about. But it's a really difficult kind of thing to navigate every day.
Yeah, and we actually covered last week the history of like how did everything go wrong when we were living in villages and listening to our children, and then suddenly we have this like sleep training culture of like don't touch or hug your children. So we did a whole episode on that last episode, so listeners are really familiar with how it came about, and it came about through doctors,
old white men.
Old white men. Doctors, but it seems like the medical industry still hasn't caught up. And I know that Candace St. John is working on a course at the moment for healthcare practitioners around what biologically normal infant sleep is. But the challenge is, you're right, like even if you can help triage, you're not the healthcare practitioner. You have to refer on to someone who's just going to be like, nope, moving on. And it was so hard. Like we had to fight so hard. It wasn't until my daughter was 2 and had a much more obvious issue that we got a diagnosis. Like it took so much time and effort to get anyone to take us seriously. But anyways, we have less than a minute left, Jess. So do you have any parting remarks for us?
Where can we find you?
Yes.
You can mainly find me on Instagram at Infant Sleep Scientist. That's where I hang out on the day-to-day, spend, far too much time. And I guess my parting words would just be, I my ultimate goal is getting information out. And one of the biggest issues I have, if you're going to put it like that, with sleep training is the lack of informed consent around it. Parents are entitled, reserve the right at the end of the day to do what's right for their family. But, a lot of people are making decisions off the back of claims that just aren't true. And that's one of the, things that I sort of want to change is giving people correct information and letting them make decisions based on that rather than out of fear and misinformation.
Absolutely.
And very noble cause.
And we know that is not going to help you grow, because we know what helps with growth on social media platforms, and it's quick fixes, it's easy solutions, it's I can guarantee your baby will sleep, rather than let me help you figure out how to survive this really hard period of time with the least amount of harm to you and your child. So it's going to be an uphill battle, and I'm right there with you. We are working on growing while the sleep trainers are growing to 300,000 plus, just by live streaming babies being sleep trained in a closet. Anyways. We can talk about it. But anyways, it is what it is, friends. So yeah, let's try and push people towards the safe places, because when I was a brand new mum, all I wanted was a safe place and someone who wasn't spouting the sleep training rhetoric. So I wish I'd found someone like you. The version of you that I found was Cassidy Peachy, who wasn't even really a scientist. She was just a mum that did Isla Grace, but it was the first person that told me it was okay to contact Nat and to let my baby sleep the way that she did. So I know that you are certainly doing that for many families out there. So keep up the good fight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us and answering all of our wonderful questions. Well, no, our questions weren't wonderful. Your answers were.
I was about to say, wow, Siobhan, really humble today.
I know.
It's a total vibe. I mean, you can be not humble.
I had a really good time. Sorry. Now okay. We're talking over each other.
You're joining the club.
Joining the club.
Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
I appreciate being here. I've had a great time talking to you both. I have followed you both for quite a while. I think I saw Kristen on TikTok before I even, launched into, I haven't exactly launched into the space, but started in the space. So it's a bit of a, moment for me being on your podcast and just love both the work that both of you do. And it's pretty cool. We all have the same background. We're all doing similar things, have similar motivations and purposes, but we're going about it in our own different ways as well.
Mm-hmm. And you're part of the scientist collective that I've got running at the moment in terms of parenting and social media, parent mental health and social media. So yeah, we're about to start launching into some research as well. I mean, Siobhan, you're more than welcome to join us.
Do you know what? As soon as you said that, I was like, oh shit, I never signed up to that. But no, I'm happy to. I wasn't sure if I was eligible because I don't actively do research.
Siobhan, you are always eligible. But yeah, what's our latest project that we're talking about is the impacts of maternal child health nurses on parental mental health and parental competence. I know. That's a whole other conversation we can have.
Yeah. I've had some good ones. Mind you, the good one, I just ignored the nonsense she was spouting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that counts. Anyway, a whole nother topic.
Yes, absolutely. We'll let Jess go now.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Not at all. It was great. And yeah, we can chat again about something else sometime.
We certainly will. We'll book one in for the whole digital media literacy, social learning thing, technology. That'll do it.
Good words. Love it. Great words there.
See ya, Jess.
Bye, Jess.
Welcome back, Parenting Unpacked crew. We still don't have a nickname for them. I keep thinking to call them Packers, and that just that doesn't work.
What doesn't sound right?
Can we nickname you? Can you offer nicknames for our listeners? Because we don't.
Yes,
we don't know.
Absolutely, you can. Technically, we have a Parenting Unpacked Instagram. Parenting Unpacked _podcast.
I think it's just Parenting Unpacked podcast, all one word, but I don't know. I'll have a look now while you keep talking.
Yeah, we're not very active. Or obviously you can reach out to Kristen at Dr. Kristen Summer, or me, Siobhan, at science_minded. Tell us, what would you like to be called? What's a cool name? Are you punny and clever at these kinds of things? Because we are not.
Excellent point. It is Parenting Unpacked podcast, all one word. I usually tag it, so there's that. We should probably. I haven't logged into it for a long time, so I'm sorry, guys, if you've been sending us messages. We are not great at this. Anyways,
we're great at it in our special way. We do things a bit chaotically, but it works for us. And apparently it works for some of you because you keep coming back and listening. Hopefully you really enjoyed that conversation with Jess. We certainly did.
Yes, it really took us a while to get onto that, didn't we? To get back to the topic that we just came back from a chat with Jess.
we did. No. Oh, absolutely. No, Jess is lovely. I really enjoyed it. I thought she had some really awesome answers to some questions that I was genuinely curious about. So hopefully you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I did, but listeners, we shall see. Hopefully it gave you some insight into what it's like on the other side of the sleep training spectrum. But yeah, I don't really have anything else for you. Do you have a fun fact Friday, even though it's Tuesday?
No, I do not.
I feel like I should have fun facts. Like, I don't. My brain.
I have an unfact-checked fun fact.
Oh, okay.
I heard Dr. Vanessa Lapointe. She's a kind of big name and does talks. Anyway, I saw her. Anyway, all of this is, I know where you're going with this. But I saw a thing where she said that babies create 700 new brain connections every day. And maybe that's true, but how cool is that if it is?
That is a lot. You know what? I do have a fun fact. And it's because I just did a revision of a paper that I'm about to preprint. So by the time you guys hear this, I will have a new preprint up, which means that it's like been through one round of peer review and it's now up on the ether, waiting for acceptance on the journal. And while it waits, is like an open source version. But anyways, one thing I learned during the revision process was that there is new research saying that children who are more exposed to technology actually learn better from it, which is really interesting because for a long time it was just, kids don't learn as well from screens as they do from real life. That effect is now dissipating, which is what my paper that I'm about to preprint is about. And instead, what we see is that children with more interaction, more exposure to technology, facilitates their ability to learn from it. And that's not surprising at all because it really normalizes that technology is a source of important information. And the hilarious thing is that kind of ties in with some of the research out of our lab with Mark and Frankie Fong. So Mark Nielsen and Frankie Fong and some other people have done some research where they found that children actually engender people on screens with more like trust and normativity and social value than real life people. So they really see screens as like the expert now and like real life humans as not the expert, which I find wild and also makes total sense that we as adults do the same thing on Instagram.
Absolutely. That's so interesting. And I think your point to the fact that children who are more have more experience and exposure to technology learn better from it, that makes complete sense. Like the more we use a tool, the more functional the tool is for us and our learning. So, and that not only from an anecdotal perspective, kids who are more au fait with technology are better at using it.
Yes. This makes sense. And they're also better at taking other information out of it. It's not just like they only know how to use the technology. They can also generalize what they see on the screen to other things. So anyways, that's my Fun Fact Friday. Preprint should be out by now, and I will link to it somewhere, somehow, one day. But anyways, that's it for us today. Any parting words, Siobhan?
No, have fun. Hope you enjoy your life and your week. And we look forward to talking to you again next week about the perfect mother myth.
Which is what we plan to do today, and then switch tacks at the last second. So that's fine. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.